The next thing we need to recognize is that the goal in solving an equation is to have the very simple form variable equals constant. Whatever the variable is in the problem must be entirely by itself on one side of the equation. Variable on one side of the equation by itself equals constant on the other side of the equation by itself. Now, one thing we need to recognize is that when we have an equation, the two sides of the equation may be interchanged. That is, instead of having variable equals constant, it is perfectly correct to have constant equals variable. So variable equals constant, or constant equals variable. That is, we can pick up the two sides of the equation and swap. The preferred form is to have the variable on the left. But if the variable appears on the right, that's okay, as long as the variable is alone. Now, how do we solve equations to get this goal accomplished? Another starred rule, the addition property of equations. The addition property of equations says, adding the same expression to both sides of an equation does not change its solution. Addition property of equations. Adding the same expression to both sides of an equation does not change its solution. Adding the same expression to both sides of an equation does not change its solution. We will look at examples of the addition property of equations in just a moment. But first I'm going to give you the use for the addition property of equations. When do we use it and how does it work? The use is to remove a term from one side of an equation by adding its opposite to both sides. The use of the addition property. Remove a term from one side of an equation by adding its opposite to both sides. Remove a term from one side of an equation by adding its opposite to both sides. Remove a term from one side of an equation by adding its opposite to both sides. Remember our golden rule. If we add the opposite to one side, we must also add it to the other side. Therefore, we add the opposite to both sides. The thing we are removing is a term. We remove a term. A term is something that is added. A term is an add-in. That is, we remove something that is being added from one side of an equation by adding its opposite. We remove a term by adding its opposite to both sides. Let's take a look at the addition property at work. The examples have as the instructions, solve each equation. Solve each equation. Our first example, x plus 8 equals -3. x plus 8 equals negative 3. Our goal is to get the variable alone. The variable is x. X is not alone. X has an extra term, 8, added to it. The addition property says that to remove a term, we can add its opposite to both sides. The opposite of 8 is negative 8. And so we copy x plus 8 equals negative 3 and add negative 8 to the left side and to the right side. X plus 8 plus negative 8 equals negative 3 plus negative 8. X plus 8 plus negative 8 equals negative 3 plus negative 8. 8 plus negative 8 is 0. Adding 0 doesn't change anything, and so we can think of these as, in effect, having been canceled. That leaves us with x on the left, and negative 3 plus negative 8 is negative 11. The answer is negative 11. X equals negative 11. How do we know whether we're right? Every equation can always be checked. Let's check this equation to find out whether it's correct. To check, we copy the equation x plus 8 equals negative 3. X plus 8 equals negative 3. Make our T format for checking. In place of x, we'll write a set of parentheses to receive the number we're going to try. Then plus 8. On the right-hand side of the wall, simply negative 3. The x value we're checking is negative 11, and so we'll fill in negative 11 in the parentheses. Negative 11 plus 8 is negative 3. Negative 3 equals negative 3. That is true. I'll check it as true, which means x equals negative 11 is the correct answer. I'll box the answer in. X equals negative 11 is the solution to this equation. Let's take a look at another example. Example 2 is negative 4 is equal to y subtract 9. Negative 4 is equal to y subtract 9. The variable is y. Y must be alone on one side of the equation. It is not alone now. We have with the y a term, 9, being subtracted, which means we can write y plus negative 9. To eliminate a term that is added, we add its opposite. The opposite of negative 9 is positive 9, and so we'll add positive 9 to both sides of this equation. This gives us, on the left, negative 4 add 9. Then the equals mark. On the right, y plus negative 9 add 9. The negative 9 and the 9 are opposites. They add to 0, which means in effect they are canceled. This leaves us on the left, negative 4 plus 9, which is 5. On the right, simply y. So we have 5 equals y. Let's check. To check, we copy the original problem, which was negative 4 equals y subtract 9. We make our T format. Negative 4 equals y subtract 9. On the left, all we have is negative 4. On the right, we have parentheses to receive the y value, subtract 9. The y value we're checking is 5, and so in place of y, we'll fill in 5. 5 subtract 9 is negative 4. 5 subtract 9, or 5 add negative 9, is negative 4. Negative 4 equals negative 4. This checks, which means that our answer is 5 equals y. Now, you recall that I mentioned that when we have an equation, let's look back at our original equation here. When we have an equation, the equation can be written in reverse by simply picking up the two sides and swapping them. The thing that is uncomfortable for many people about this equation is that the y, the variable, is on the right-hand side. Many people feel better if they see the variable on the left-hand side. And so let's look at this problem worked another way.